Good morning, friends. This is an updated video about my struggles with getting the Wuflu exemption so I wouldn't have to get the jab. Also, I wish this was under better circumstances that I'm recording this video, but I did get some bad news from work. And it was related not to the Wuflu vac vaccination, it was for the seasonal flu shots, which I will get into later. Pretty amazing. And I actually expected it, and I think you'll be quite entertained. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a whole rundown as into how I got an exemption to avoid getting the jab. Uh, it all started in September, and well, here we go. So uh, earlier in the year, as soon as the Wuflu shots got approved for emergency use, there was a huge campaign to get people to get the shot. Uh, Not only did they use fear, you know, so many people are dying, so many people are getting hospitalized, so many people are getting sick. I mean, you would have thought that if you walked outside of your house, you would see bodies, you know, all over the street, piled up in body bags, just waiting to be picked up, kind of like in the Middle Ages during the plague, the Black Death. So it was so serious that they actually had to bribe people. Can you imagine that? Bribing people to get a jab. Uh, Fear, bribery, coercion. They got all the corporations on board. All the big companies started making it a requirement, except uh, the actual companies that made the shots. Moderna, Pfizer, J&J. They did not require their employees to get the jab. They were giving exemptions left and right. They were recommending it, but they were not pursuing it because, well, they probably know that it's made of dog shit. Any vaccine that is approved by the government or by the FDA, um, any of those companies that produce those vaccines are not ever liable for anything that happens to you, any side effects. Doesn't matter how badly you get sick, um, what horrible side effects you might have. It doesn't matter if you die. Your family cannot sue that company. This was determined in 1986, an act of Congress. Can you believe that? Your representatives told you that, no, go screw yourself. You're going to get jabbed. We're going to make you get jabbed, and you can't sue us if something wrong happens. That's a, and it's even getting worse. It's even getting worse right now. But I kind of covered that in the previous video. So any of these companies, they don't have any incentive to make their medications out of the most premium, the best ingredients, using the best technology. No, they can make it out of dog shit and they can't be held liable. Pretty ridiculous, right? So that campaign went on for months. Um, some some states, if you can believe it, were running lotteries where people can actually win $1 million or more, probably, if they got a jab. They get their name on the list, and oh, their number gets pulled, and oh, congratulations, you won $1 million. How do you feel? Was it worth getting the shot? No. Anyway, maybe if the chances of winning that lottery were like, I don't know, 1 in 10, then I'd consider it. But even then, it's kind of iffy because I don't know what's going to happen to me in 5, 10 years. It's scary stuff. So people had to be coerced. They had to be bribed. That's how bad it is. That's how bad this virus is. You don't know how bad it is. So we have to coerce you and we have to bribe you to get the shot. And the endless fear campaign, every single news story, for months and months and months was about the Wuflu, how bad it is, about the everything that's going on, all the precautions that everybody's taking, and how horrible those anti-vaxxers are that will not take the vaccine. They don't care. They don't care. Why should they care? You got the vaccine, right? It works, right? So why can't they choose their own health decisions or decide what to do with their own health? Why do you care? You're vaccinated. You're protected. Who cares? Anyway, rambling now. So for months that happened. It was voluntary, and then in September it became mandatory, right? Or late August, something like that. So as soon as that happened, all of the counties, most of the states jumped on board. They jumped on board. Um, all of the companies jumped on board. They started requiring it. Some companies did offer exemptions. My company offered a religious exemption, but you had to prove your religious exemption, and I'm going to get into that in some detail here. Um, so they gave us a deadline of October 1st to get uh, the shots. Um, there was no way that I was going to do it. There was no way any of my family was going to do it. You know, we're reasonable people, we're healthy. There's no reason for us to take an experimental medication that was developed in less than a year. Um, so we opted out, but I did have to submit an exemption. And what I did is I submitted the official Catholic guidance of the bishops of Colorado about getting the shots. And it was quite clear. It had several bullet points as to why they do not believe in making people take the shot. They believe in conscience, which I believe in. They believe they obviously are pro-life, so they're against abortions, and all of the shots were developed through fetal line cell research and development. So they were fine with people refusing it, and they were fine with people accepting it as long as they did it out of good conscience for themselves, which is important. People need to have choice in life, the freedom of choice. My body, my choice, right? Uh, but that didn't matter. So I filed the exemption request, and I attached that article, the whole article, signed by the bishops. Uh, and that was not enough. And it wasn't enough because I also specified that I believe in the Constitution and freedom of choice and civil liberties. I think that pissed them off. I work with for a very progressive company, or worked. I'll tell you later about what happened. Uh, so it was rejected. It was rejected. Uh, it was rejected. So I had to respond. I was pretty shocked because I thought that the letter from the bishops was sufficient. Uh, so I said to them, you know what? I'm not going to comply. Uh, s- Several counties, there was a conglomerate of counties that had the same health department where I live, and they started seceding from that agreement, from that conglomerate, because some counties were more conservative and believed in civil liberties than others. So they started leaving and started making their own health departments where they would not mandate anything. Uh, so I specified that, you know, our company is in two of the counties that are seceding this this conglomerate that is mandating these things. So why continue with this crap? You know, why not jump on the right side of history here? Um, I also said that under no circumstances am I going to get it, and if I have to take legal action, I will. So And I again specified how important it is for the company to represent its employees and protect their personal health decisions and advocate for them and to make reasonable accommodations. That's reasonable, right? Not for this company. So they didn't like that, and they said that I did not provide sufficient proof of my religious exemption. The article was not enough. So obviously they didn't read the article. So then I responded and I submitted my so-called appeal. Let me get that up for you here. It's very, very fun. And this is what I said. Under no circumstances will I renounce my pro-life profile, sorry. Under no circumstances will I renounce my pro-life stance and support a vaccine which was developed through fetal line cells from aborted babies. Under no circumstances will I renounce the Constitution of the United States by discarding my civil liberties and support a tyrannical imposition of my rights. Under no circumstances will I renounce my right to privacy of my protected health information. Under no circumstances, oh, sorry, that I was referring to the mark of compliance, the communist like mark of compliance. In Soviet Russia, I talked about this in one of my videos. In Soviet Russia, where I come from, there was also a mark of compliance. You had to produce uh, the Communist Party membership card in order to get certain things, in order to be eligible for certain jobs, in order to not lose your job, to get in front of the line in some of the food banks and all that kind of crap. Um, Under no circumstance will I renounce my dignity by bending to your demands for additional evidence related to my personal beliefs. Under no circumstances will I provide proof of this vaccination or any further vaccinations. And I strongly recommend that you cease and desist any further pursuit of this inquisition, as I have already contacted lawyers. I also strongly recommend that you, as a private nonprofit organization, reject blah 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 county's short-sighted and unethical demands. It is your duty to provide reasonable accommodations since Douglas County is seceding from the Tri-County contract. You could reassign me to one of blah blah blah's county offices, or I can even work remotely. Just to clarify, I do work in the healthcare field, but I can easily have no patient direct contact and meet with them remotely to do what I do. So that's the appeal I sent, and they didn't like that appeal. However, they had no choice but to grant it. Um, I mean, obviously they always have a choice, but what happened is the director of HR, who was promoted to even a higher position in the organization, probably because she was able to get a lot of people fired and off the payroll. Um, she approved my appeal, and she laid out the requirement of me having to get tested weekly. And I go into this in more detail, and it's quite comical in my previous videos. But then she also added a personal attack on me in her last paragraph. I'm going to read that to you. That said, I think it's important I share my reaction to your email. The tone of your communication is disrespectful and unprofessional. It reads as demanding, accusatory, and aggressive, and also contains inaccurate information. This is a state mandate, not a blah 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 health mandate, blah blah county health mandate, which we do not have the ability to opt out of. If we want to continue to operate as a blah 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 center. I'm not going to go into details of the healthcare center. Your threats of attorney involvement and your insinuation that I am not familiar with our duties as an employer were deeply disturbing and offensive. This type of communication is not consistent with blah blah blah's values and does not demonstrate respectful and compassionate communication. While I understand that this is a deeply personal and emotional issue for many, it does not excuse the tone of your email. Even when there is disagreement, discussion can happen without resorting to personal attacks and threats. I respectfully request that future communications regarding this or any other issue reflect kindness and a tone of collaboration rather than hostility. So that was her response. Um, okay. Uh, just a preface, in my initial request, I did specify that I was a political refugee from communist Soviet Union, and uh, I was deeply affected by this new mandate, which was very reminiscent of the things that were going on in the Soviet Union before it collapsed. Um, so this is the final response that I sent them after being granted the exemption for the Wuflu. I also found it deeply disturbing that my initial exemption request was denied despite my indication of severe trauma related to my childhood, which was spent in communist Russia, and my Christian values. Sensitivity and kindness were absent in your initial denial, so let's please end this back and forth game and continue doing our jobs without hurting each other's feelings. Thank you. Signed, Phil. All right, so that's that. So I was granted it, and I didn't get fired, whatever. Um, but then I didn't let go. I didn't let go of this situation. Um, for about a month after that, there were coworkers coming up to me, some of them literally like crying on my shoulder, telling me how horrible they feel, how they do not want to get a jab, but they are forced to because they don't have another another choice in the matter. Um, they need their job. They need to make money. Um, so I had a lot of conversations with a lot of employees, and I did not let it go. And I took the opportunity to make myself and them heard during our like monthly team meeting, where I said that I was deeply disturbed at how my company automatically exempted several classes, several teams. That's what they call them. No, they exempted the board of directors. They exempted the board of directors. Uh, they exempted the board of directors. They exempted a bunch of the departments in the main administration building. And their excuse was because they didn't have direct patient contact. However, these people have contact with us all the time, with the employees, so that didn't make any sense. So I raised that. And actually, I took that opportunity during one of the segments of the meeting where they were discussing equity and how to improve equity in the organization. By equity, I think they meant diversity. Um, so, and then the director that was running the meeting asked if open forum, asked if anybody had any comments or questions about equity in the organization before we went on to the next subject. And I said immediately, yes. Usually these meetings go on without anybody speaking besides the director. I said, yes, I have a question. And I asked, why is it that these certain classes got automatically exempt from getting the shot? That's not equal. That's not equal treatment of the employees. So it got the same BS answer. It got a little bit contentious. I said, no, no, no. You're forcing your certain employees, the lower rung employees, to produce, these marks of compliance, and you don't have to do it. So the director got really, really pissed off at me, and she said, "Oh, I can show you my my vaccine card. I said, that's the point. It's none of my business. I don't have a right to see your personal health information, and neither should you have a right to see mine. So the meeting ended. She was not happy. Um, Later on, I understood that she got fired within a few days after the meeting, probably because she went to the CEO and demanded my resignation or my termination. And From my understanding, it was a very heated discussion. However, I've been employed there for 9 years at that particular time in September for 9 years, and I had a clean record. And in fact, the only write-up I had is from this director that wanted me fired after this meeting. Uh, so there was no reason to fire me, and she got fired probably because of the exchange that she had with the CEO. Um, Whatever. Hope she's happy. Maybe it has not had nothing to do with me. Maybe it was a personal beef or whatever. But I do understand, and I do know for a fact it was a heated discussion shortly after that meeting. Life went on. Most other employees folded. There were a couple that got exemptions for religious reasons. Um, uh, a couple of them I consulted and told them exactly what to write. Uh, and life went on. Life went on. I did have to get tested every week. And incidentally enough, I did get sick with the Wuflu, and it was confirmed. I tested positive. I had all the symptoms. I have a whole separate video about two of them probably, um, about how it went down and my symptoms and how I was feeling, how I dealt with it, in this ridiculous situation at work. So I'm not going to go into that. So that went by, and then in mid-October, they started talking about the seasonal flu shot on top of the Wuflu shot, and I flat refused. Um, my wife got a flu shot. Sorry, no, 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 not a flu shot. She got a pneumonia shot earlier this flu season, earlier in the fall. And she got violently ill. So we decided as a family that in this situation, we can't trust what's in any vaccine in this current political environment where jabs are, you know, forced into you without your consent. So we'll refuse everything. And I refused the flu shot. They they also offered a religious exemption. What kind of religious exemption? So my conscience doesn't allow me to allow you to make my personal health decisions for me. So that was my exemption request. Um, they rejected that, and I said, "Fine, fire me, whatever. I'm not getting it." So uh, they fired me. They fired me. They gave me, let's see, there was a long delay. I filed the exemption, which was in an email. I didn't even, it was a few lines. I said, very common sense things. First, I already got the Wuflu exemption. Secondly, I'm taking all the precautions already. Thirdly, my wife got sick earlier a month ago because she got a shot, and I don't want to play Russian roulette, even though I'm Russian. I'm not into that. So I'm just gonna not get a flu shot this year, and probably not for the next couple of years. They said that's not sufficient. That's not sufficient. That's not a religious exemption. I said I don't. Well, my conscience is religious, right? I can't act against my conscience. So I'm not going to get the shot. They didn't like that. They gave me a deadline of the 30th of November. to get the flu shot or to provide a sufficient religious exemption. I said, and this was 3 weeks ago, so 3 weeks prior to that, or 2 weeks, sorry, 2 weeks before the deadline. I said, well, okay, that's fine. So should I go on unpaid leave now, or are you going to put me on unpaid leave or terminate me after the 30th of November? They didn't really respond. I said, I'm not going to get it. So let's not delay this. Why don't you start the process now if your intention is to fire me? They didn't. They used me. Um, there was several very difficult cases at that time that really only I was able to handle. So I completed those cases, and then conveniently enough, there we go. Those people were out. They're good. The patients were good. Um, Good outcomes for everybody. Well, the deadline came up. The deadline came up, and I said, "There's no way that I'm going to get a shot." They said, "Well, we'll put you on 7-day unpaid leave, and then we'll terminate you if you don't comply." And I said, "No, you've already delayed this too much, so I am not going to comply. So just terminate me now." And they did. They terminated me without a severance. Um, Obviously, they're going to pay out my paid time off, and then I'll roll over my 401k. Really crappy anyway. Nobody should keep their money in a 401k anyway. Um, so there we go. They finally got rid of me, um, and I am officially self-employed, and I'm pretty happy. Well, I mean, we'll see how happy I am here in in a few weeks. But it's been what, 2 days, 3 days since I got terminated. Um, just completely ridiculous. I was the longest tenured employee um, there. Well, at least at, on the team where I worked, at the campus where I worked. I was there over 9 years, and I got fired. What they really didn't like, I think, is that I pointed out how ridiculous their policy for the flu shot is. I reminded them that they granted my Wuflu exemption. So basically, they're saying that the precautions that they said that I have to take because I don't have the Wuflu jab are good enough for preventing the spread of the Wuflu, but it was not sufficient enough for the seasonal flu. I pointed out how ridiculous that was. So yeah, I am pursuing legal action, um, and I'll let you know how it goes. Let me know what you think. Thanks for listening.